So I think people will still be coming in bit by bit, but since we have a lot of you and not a lot of time, I just thought we should start the conversation off. The intention behind these regional connects is just to make sure we have space to bring people together from similar regions and give them time to build these long-lasting local relationships that kind of this and workplace kind of take the place of the hallway conversations you would have at an in-person gathering. And as many of you know, we've had 81 participants from 11 countries in Convergence for this past month of action. And some of you may have been in several conversations together, and some of you may have not overlapped at all in the past month. So want to make sure that everyone in the Western Hemisphere did have that space and time to meet, hear from one another, and of course you can go back to workplace and connect, or connect however you choose, and see what you take away from this together, build those deeper connections and those longer lasting relationships that will go much farther beyond Convergence. But first, we're beginning every session with an acknowledgement and a reminder. So lift your hands off the keyboard, no typing, no clicking, and take hold of your own hand, however feels comfortable to you. We are not alone. We have power in our hands. This is not a light topic, and in this conversation, we will be intellectualizing and abstracting a set of very real experiences. These discussions may trigger a wide range of emotions. In this room, statistically, are survivors of gender-based violence, and we all participate in political, social, cultural, and economic systems that give permission for and facilitate violence. So let's take a moment of silence to acknowledge the violence happening in this precise moment somewhere to someone. Now reverse your hands and notice the difference. We have come together to create new possibilities to address the epidemic of violence in our world, and connected in new ways we can do even more. So let's begin. Now, as I was saying earlier, there's a lot of you, and now about 25 minutes, and we want to make sure that we hear from all of you. And so we're going to go around the room with a set of questions. Hopefully you've received an email from your relationship manager that has some of those, and so some of those same questions, so you may have already had a chance to think about them. The questions are, what surprised you the most about Convergence, about any of the conversations you were in, the things you might have seen on workplace, other participants you came into contact with? What surprised you most? Did you have a light bulb moment or an aha moment that you'd like to share with the group? And what is going to be your first action step once Convergence is over? And building on that, is there anyone in this region that can support you in this? So we'll put those into the chat. One sort of ground rule, make sure you're building on what people said before you. So not ditto that or what they said, but that and what else. And you don't have to go into detail. I know we probably have what, like a minute per person at this point. So pretty quick answers. I'll put them in the chat here. Oh, LD already does. All right.
Just missing the last one.
Okay, I'll put the 3 of them in. And I'll give you just a minute to think about this. And then we may want to just assign people to keep the flow going. So someone, when you're ready, the first person can jump in, and then we'll just start getting people lined up in that order. So take a minute, think about those questions. And again, you've got about a minute per person. Anyone want to volunteer to go first?
Thank you, Christina. I think this has been a very good moment for Ability Africa Foundation. It's now 1 month long of experience and very fruitful discussions on a number of issues which are very important in terms of supporting our organization to designing a more focused program on addressing gender-based violence, particularly using finance as a tool of social transformation. So what surprised me most was how lively it was to walks of lives from different millennials. I just share our thinking in terms of how best can we design programs that will be able to use finance as a tool for social transformation and social change, focusing on transforming the financial systems, the structures and the infrastructures. So I noticed there are a lot of opportunities, particularly in Kenya and in developing countries, because there are a lot of gaps. One thing that I would really carry forward is the research component, which was at some point presented by Jessica Menon. This was a great opportunity for us as Ability Africa Foundation because our strategic plan is due next year, and we are thinking very critically in terms of how can we now embed this as one of our strategic pillars, research on gender-based violence, so that we have focused and evidence-based interventions as we engage with the duty bearers, with the government and other stakeholders in the GBV sector, and also working with women to support access to finance and also address the GBV issues around the same. I am very thrilled that I have had at different levels. We have had some chats at personal level, private chats with some of the individuals. I can see even Judith here. We had interacted with her. We exchanged some brief chats. And I want to believe, because of this opportunity, we have profiled ourselves to a level where we are in a global picture as an organization. We are in a global map. And we start to be, and if our space is free, we all the leaders who participated in this convergence, our doors as Ability Africa Foundation is open. We are really looking forward to developing co-creation and the new development partnerships so that we are able to comprehensively address gender-based violence in Kenya. So I am very happy about this. In terms of way forward, I think we are going to revolutionize our programming components, a lot of it. So we are going to mainstream gender-based violence intervention. Yes.
Thank you.
So I think basically that's the focus. It's okay, no problem, I understand, but I'm very thrilled, I'm very happy, I've learned a lot, and this is really going to help our organization to build on new knowledge, innovations, and new strategies for addressing gender-based violence. Thank you so much, Christy.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
I put the questions in the chat box for those who just came in, and I also put the next three people who are up, Judith, Mary, and then Andrew. A reminder, there's so many of us, we got to keep the answers pretty short to a minute. You don't have to answer all of those, so whatever really stands you want to share with the group. Thank you.
Okay, so I can do this short and sweet because I've got my answers. I think what was most surprising was the ability to talk about prevention without pushback, which was lovely after 20 years in this field. What most, the light bulb moment was, oh, this is a new and emerging market. We actually have something to offer for that. And the first action step is to learn what it is to run a private equity fund. Because I believe that if we had a private equity fund where the company is invested in and have to have a GBV prevention protocol already in place, then that would be a very attractive fund for me to invest in as an investor. So if we don't have one, we need to create one, and that's my first action step.
Thank you, Mary.
Yes, I have two parts to my first action step. One is, so I work in a Protestant denomination in the US, which has a fair number of different ways that money is invested. And my first step is to have an initial conversation with the executive for one of our foundations, using our own church's social teaching on gender-based violence as a prompt for how can we talk about investments. And also then to talk with our education director, with all of our people who work on hunger in the US, and how might folks who work in hunger be equipped to help with the local efforts on gender-based violence. Something I could use, I will be looking at Workday for more kind of printed reports to share with our executive in the foundation.
Andrew?
So good morning, everyone. Andrew Morrison, connected from Lima, Peru, work in the Inter-American Development Bank. What surprised me the most? I was surprised that of the limited amount of public-private partnerships working together to finance prevention in the area of violence against women. I think that's an area where we need to work going forward. My aha moment is that data is equally important for people working on private finance, but they need different types of data than those of us inhabiting the public sector. They don't need data on impact evaluation on what works to prevent. They need very simple data that allows them to know how well firms are dealing and how well funds are dealing with with violence against women. And action steps, I have two. One is to meet with a Criterion working group that's beginning to think about how infrastructure finance can address issues of violence. And second, I'd like to educate myself more about gender lens investing. And this builds a little bit on what Judith said. What might a protocol look like for gender lens investing and violence? And I volunteer all my ignorance and a willingness to learn, my expertise on violence against women in developing countries and my ignorance about gender lens investing. And I'd love to participate in that initiative, Judith. You have a willing student here. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Regina, then Teen, and then Rosaline.
Thanks. So what surprised me was to learn about the different angles that you can tackle GBV. Because I was aware of the broader gender lens strategies that are there, but I didn't know that there are so many angles that you can take to look at GBV. I just think I'm still scratching at the surface, so looking forward to learning more there. Light bulb moment was probably to see that this topic is very relevant both to private investors and to the foundations and NGOs and everybody there. Because it does influence risk, also investment risk and return expectations. So that's good news because that means it's all the more relevant to what we do as a Convergence, the global network for blended finance. And then next steps would be to continue diving into how blended finance can help address gender-based violence. We have some ideas on what we can do, but now the task is to take that back to the members of our network and discuss concrete ideas and also put a spotlight on those initiatives that are already out there. And that's something that I'm committed to do. And of course, I would welcome any cooperation, both from existing Convergence members, but also from new organizations that may not be aware yet. So I've started some outreach to some organizations that are on this call and beyond. Thanks.
Teen, and then Rosaline.
Yes, Teen Ward, founder and CEO of Rockflower Partners, which is a venture philanthropy fund globally. I'm embarrassed to say that I just haven't thought through these questions properly long enough, but the quick answer is, I guess I was surprised by just how incredibly sane and smart and well-versed in everything everybody on all of the conversations that I was involved in were, given that it's been a bit of a shit show year. The second thing is a light bulb moment. Well, we had a funny thing last week, right? And I'm kind of going to follow up with you that probably later today or tomorrow, but I think we might be onto something with this idea of creating a book called Showdown, kind of copying the theory of drawdown and figuring out how we can split into sectors. So clearly I'm not qualified to write it, but I know a few people around all of this. So anyway, we're going to have a conversation about that and see what we can build on there. And probably other action steps are, I've been working on creating a sort of expanding Rockflower into a larger holding company that would go across sort of a whole ecosystem of investment, which I'm going to look into, and I'm going to bug people like Lauren and Judith and a few other people to look at kind of where I'm going with this and see if I'm totally nuts. So that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you so much. It's been really incredible, and I feel really privileged to have been part of it.
Exciting to hear all these ideas. Rosaline, and then we'll go to Devin, Lauren, and Karen.
Hi, everyone. My surprise was the disconnect in language between practitioners in GBV at, third world country, grassroots level, and finance. So just been wrapping my head around how to take the convergence conversations into the reality of that world where we work. What I'm taking away is how much everybody on both ends was asking the how question. How can we do this? How can we narrow the gap? How can we make this work? So that has been exciting, and I think Convergence is going to birth some ideas, and I would love to be part of those ideas. And the first step to be taken, I think already taken. Judith and I have had some conversations into future collaborations in preventive trainings and workshops for rural women who are always left out of the discussions. So I'm looking forward to that, Judith. And also just looking forward to more partnerships and collaborations and people who are willing to take the chance and say, how can we fill the gap and take this to the grassroots, to women who would never be in the room.
Thank you. Devin, and Lauren, and Karen.
Sure. One of the aha moments for me was that MEDA, as an economic development organization where I work, has done some work in gender-based violence through grassroots partners in some of the countries we work in emerging markets. But it's seen kind of on the side as something that we do. It's not actually understood as fully part of the suite of women's economic empowerment, which we own really strongly at MEDA. So I think what this series of events have done is give me confidence that this is an area we do need to own and take responsibility for across our work, especially in anything we're doing in women's economic empowerment, but beyond that as well. So that's just a takeaway for me, and so a commitment in terms of one of my action steps is to go back to my organization and advocate for that across. A couple other action items for me. One is I work with investment funds in emerging markets to take a gender lens, but gender-based violence is one that, beyond just talking about kind of sexual harassment in the workforce, I haven't pushed it further than that. And so I really look forward to digging into the resources and tapping into this network around how we do engage those fund managers to change the questions they're asking and the ways they look at companies that they're investing in. And maybe as a kind of invitation or piece that I'm curious about and would love to link into is just maybe what some folks have talked about as a blended finance transaction, or what UD was saying with a private equity fund, or if it's a holding company like Teen was mentioning. But what are the kinds of investment vehicles that need to be established that are designed up front and center to address gender-based violence, not just kind of mainstreaming it in, as I was mentioning a moment ago. And MEDA as an investor, so we'd love to kind of think about that and co-create that with others. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren and Karen.
Hi, everybody. Apologies for the confusion looking at my name. So my wife and I accidentally swapped our Zoom accounts last night. And so while I probably am not as eloquent as my wife, Leah, I'll do my best to at least share with you some thoughts this morning. I think for me, really kind of the aha moment was just the way in which people's ideas turned into, hey, that's something we could really do. Just the incredible brain power that is distilled from conversations into, I think that we could actually put together an insurance product. And I'm really so keenly focused on this. You may remember that you brought this up early in Convergence, and now there's been a circle formed and conversations around the circle. So to my mind, I just think it's so cool that people can start with, that's an interesting idea, to, hey, let's do it. In terms of action items, so I've actually already started my action item number 1. With the help of a colleague, we're taking a lot of the information that Criterion put together in the information folders that people have shared and are doing our analysis, which I then would like to propose to my colleague Charity, who has joined this Convergence, although she's not on this call, and put together a GBV strategy for the Development Finance Corporation. And from the strategy document, think about how can DFC best use its resources and talent to address some of these issues in collaboration with the amazing people that I'm looking at right now on this Zoom call. Thank you.
Karen, and then next up after that is Jakob, Kalia, and Victoria. I was trying to unmute you too, Karen.
Hi, everyone. I feel so blessed to have all your contributions. I think my aha moment, I'll skip ahead in the interest of time, was actually when Andrew Morrison was talking about issues related to public-private partnerships. And I think one of the things that I've already done is reach out to some of the finance people who ask for more help in understanding the breadth of what's going on with gender-based violence, and make appointments with people for Zoom and telephone conversations. So thank you for great Convergence.
Okay, so I'll go next. Yeah, again, thank you very much for this amazing conversation and the conference. I think for me, the biggest surprise was I've been working in gender lens investing for a couple of years now. And I found that actually where gender lens investing was maybe 10 years ago, GBV is at right now. And looking at gender lens investing, I think we can see that there's been so many amazing developments in just the past few years that I'm very hopeful for gender-based violence lenses to also be incorporated pretty fast, seeing this amazing momentum that this conference has generated. My aha moment was actually also in Jessica's talk, where she was talking about the predictive modeling. And I thought this was such an amazing new idea of how to approach this topic. And then also for me as an analyst of how to incorporate this, which also relates to my next step, because we're planning to actually go forward with more gender lens investing offerings. And now looking at this conference and looking back at all the insights that I've gotten, I think gender-based violence is such an important thing that needs to be incorporated more than just harassment in the workplace, but to look beyond that and also incorporate the supply chain and so many more aspects that are really important here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kalia, and then Victoria.
Hi. I think the spark of conversation with smart people Joy brings together is amazing, and insights came up, and I know Joy was like over the moon about them, and I was happy, and I don't totally remember what they were, which is fine. That's the whole point of being here. I guess an action that I have is I want to get more connected with people who are trying to address GDV in the digital world and thinking about the funding into the technology sector. And and I managed to screw up my calendar and miss my one session about that. Oops. Calendars are hard. That's another learning from Convergence. So that's where I'd really like to connect more, is because I'm not in finance per se, and I'm not in GDB either. But I have this knowledge set that can help those looking at the tech and GDB and finance interfaces.
Thank you. Victoria, and then we're going to Jessica, Laura, and Tim.
So I think for me, my aha moment was the conversation we had around looking at GBV service provision as like a government procurement process instead of a grants and contributions piece. And like that, I've mentioned it a few times in different sessions, but like, what have you learned? Like that piece is really sticking with me. So I look forward to trying to make something come of that. But I think for my first action step, building on what Jakob was saying, is trying to get the government of Canada to invest in some predictive modeling around GBV rates and costs. And so if anybody's interested in having that conversation further, please reach out. But yeah, thank you everyone for the great conversations.
Thank you. Jessica?
Yeah, thanks. And Victoria, sounds like we should talk. I was really delighted to have all these conversations with many of you. And I think my surprise or aha moment was that gender-based violence is really a very complex challenge that is faced globally. But perhaps there's a very simple, elegant solution to how we can all at least start with a common vision and really create something like a GBV predictive model that can help to take a pretty simple solution and make some major impact. So my next steps, I've been sort of working out some things of what a GBV predictive model might look like that could support the finance sector, and really appreciate everything I've learned from everyone. So I've been taking in everything that I've learned from everyone and working on refining and tinkering with the model, and hoping that we can collaborate further on what that would look like. So thanks everyone.
Thank you, Laura, and then Tim, and we'll wrap up.
Hi, so same, I'm gonna echo everyone. It's such a privilege to be here. I'm a practitioner, so I'm not in the world of finance at all. And I think for me, two surprising things was, one, there's so many entry points to link both. So, I mean, in the conversation I had, there's so many different ideas on how to make the connection and have finance working to progress the GVB, the prevention of violence agenda, but also is also talking to so many people from the finance sector and having so many people from the finance sector so interested in wanting to do something. I mean, maybe it was the skeptical side of me thinking, oh my God, this is never gonna work. And seeing the work happening like in front of my eyes is just kind of, I'm really, really, really thrilled that this is happening. And I think for me, the light bulb was understanding that we need to work within the system. At the same time, we need to change the system. So like from the words that we're talking in the beginning of every session, like we are both, everyone working in a system that is facilitating gender-based violence. So we need to make the system work in favor of it, but also change the system at the same time. And I think moving forward, being a practitioner, I would like to be able to share more about the work I'm doing, to see how these connections can be made. And because I'm working with lots of organizations of the Global South on prevention of violence against women. And I think at a personal level, really need to learn more about finance, because I would love to be able to be a translator, but I realize that to be a translator, I need to understand one of the languages much better than I do. And I think these weeks have been helping me a lot, but there's, from my side, a lot of more work I need to do, because I would love to be able to help the translation side of it. So thanks everyone for sharing your insights.
I'm up.
Yeah.
So I'm I'm sitting here, I'm trying to think of the first time I met Joy Anderson, and I can't think of the actual event, but it was about, I would say it was probably 6, 7, or 8 years ago. And just for some background, Breckenridge, we're a very mainstream fixed income manager. You could walk into a Fidelity office or a Merrill Lynch office and invest in a Breckenridge strategy. But we were one of the first fixed income managers to integrate ESG. And I'm saying that because Joy heard that, and I will say to her credit, this is a compliment, she hasn't left us alone since, and has been leaning on Breckenridge. We manage a lot of municipal bond portfolios, and she did a project with us early on looking at were airport bond issuers and transportation issuers, were they in a position to do more on human trafficking and things? And she's also been an advocate for Breckenridge, and so I'm grateful for that, and Criterion has been, and we've had a lot of demand and a lot of interest in gender investment strategies from clients and prospective clients. And one of the challenges is our belief in ESG is that it's really on this notion of materiality, and that, you know, we're not an SRI manager. We're looking at the ESG factors that our research team can really use to help price risk better, which is why I'm excited about the insurance project as well. And so the aha moment for me on this event really was the how much data has become available since I first met Joy 7 or 8 years ago. And I've actually had a couple conversations with our analysts about this. And there is indeed, one of our analysts said, there is indeed an arms race of data right now, is the way he phrased it. But I think it's really an important element. And I keep referring back to the climate movement in investing, and because I really feel like it's got such great traction. And, you know, standardized, transparent reporting is such an important element to everything that we've been talking about. And so going forward, as well, at first inviting everybody to stay in touch. Contact me anytime you want for anything. Always happy to talk. But I think, you know, engaging with companies, engaging with asset owners, engaging with investors about improving reporting and transparency and standardizing that reporting across sectors is the way to make all of this so scalable. And you can't have impact. I really believe you cannot have impact without scale. And standardized reporting is a big part of that. So that would be my forward-looking assessment. And thanks for including me. I've made some fun contacts on in this conference.
Thank you, and thank all of you. I saw you kind of chatting in the chat box about different ways you're connected and things you could do together. So make sure to connect offline and in workplace and keep those conversations going. That's the whole point of bringing people together and moving ideas to action in that way. So sorry we didn't have more time for this, but I think we accomplished the goal, and we've got a couple more sessions today and tomorrow before we close out on Thursday. So yeah, we're really excited to have brought you all together. Make sure to get back to your relationship managers about what role Criterion can play in helping you take those next steps. So with that, have a great rest of your day, and thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.